So, Joao Palhinha is on his way to Tottenham, a very experienced former Premier League player, one of the best players out of possession statistically in the Premier League in his final season at Fulham. He is a number six. Tottenham need a number six, and he is coming to Tottenham. So, I'm going to give you my thoughts on this deal and if I think it will be a good signing or not. The news is Joao Palhinha to Tottenham. Here we go. Final green light arrived from Bayern, blah, 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 blah. I've got two thoughts right now. First of all, I think Tottenham needed a ball progressor six, and he's not a ball progressor six. But if you want a ball progressor six, you've got to drop 100 million on Wharton or Baleba or 80 million, let's say, on that. And maybe Tottenham want to do that next summer and focus on attack and other areas this summer. And Joao Palhinha coming on loan can sort of fill a gap, someone that can do a job in the Champions League games, bring defensive stability in the big games. And I think that's probably what it is. I think it's a very smart signing in general when you're thinking of low risk. He's coming on loan. If he flops, you don't have to buy him. If he does well, you can buy him. But he's come in there to stabilise that position defensively. I thought Tottenham looked a lot more defensively stable versus Arsenal yesterday in pre-season, and Palhinha add to that. And I think him coming in will allow you to get your Morgan Gibbs-White alternative, because you could see versus Arsenal yesterday why Morgan Gibbs-White would have been so good in that game for you guys. Potentially someone that can be and rotate with Solanke, who gets injury issues, potentially someone on the left. Odegaard did well, but I think with Son leaving, you want an experienced left winger. I guess it gives Tottenham the funds to move on to other positions. I think it's not the profile of midfielder I'd have got in if we're talking on the ball, but I think off the ball you won't find much better. And I think if it's on loan, I think it's a low risk, somewhat smart signing. It gives Tottenham the ability to just move on now and work on other targets. So is Palhinha. So he's 30 years old. He was previously at Fulham. He moved to Bayern Munich. He wasn't good at Bayern Munich last year. He wasn't great. He was very. I think he was struck with injuries, and I think it wasn't maybe what Vincent Kompany needed. I think the recruitment there was wrong. I think, look, he's a physical player. And we look at the Tottenham Arsenal game yesterday. Tottenham are very physical. They brought it to Arsenal physically. And I think that's something that Thomas Frank's like, get the physicality up, get the defensive up, and then we can work on scoring goals. He wants to get Tottenham more defensively and physically stable. And I think Palhinha is the player to do that. He is one of the most reliable ball winners in the Premier League, one of the best players out of position. He's out possession. He's very good at winning back the ball. And if you win back the ball, you can move the ball quicker. So while he's not maybe the best progressive passer in the world and he can't break lines like a Maino or an Adam Wharton or a Baleba, he's very good at winning back the ball and allowing Tottenham to then attack quickly, which is something that Thomas Frank would like. He's good in the big games because he can shut down shop. And I think bringing him on loan is smart. It's smart. I think, Baleba and Wharton realistically aren't available in this market. And I think, and I was talking about this because Manchester United also need the same kind of number six as Tottenham. We need someone that's progressive that can help him build up because we've got build up issues. And I said right now, there's not really a market where you can find the DM you want without spending 100 million. And maybe United have to go and address every other position, bring in someone on the cheap. We've been linked to Ndidi. But I even suggested someone like Hayden Hackney take a risk on that, bring in someone on the cheap. And then next summer when Casemiro goes, United can go all out for 6. And next summer, Tottenham might go all out for a 6. But what is Palhinha good at? What are his strengths? So first of all, very good duel winner. I believe I got this statistic off Twitter, so they could have made it up. But apparently he led the Premier League in tackles and duels during the 22-23 and 23-24 season. He's obviously good at protecting the back line, breaking up attacks. We know that he's very good off the ball, winning back the ball, getting the ball, defensive security, very, very good at that. That's something he will do well. And look, he's got a big game presence. He always showed up for Fulham. And I think this is why he got a lot of hype when Fulham were playing the big six sides, because he would just do that off the ball work. And I think with Tottenham, Bergville is good on the ball. Archie Gray is very young and very raw, but Archie Gray as abilities on the ball are quite good if you could put him maybe next to someone like Palhinha that could do the off the ball stuff for him. Bentancur is decent on the ball as well. And I think with Tottenham's midfield profiles, if you get another creative midfielder that's good on the ball, I think it can work. I think next summer you go for your Baleba, you go for your Adam Morton, but if you can get another like Morgan Gibbs-White alternative, I would have said Xavi Simons or Eze, but they seem to be Arsenal and Chelsea bound. But if you can get a creative player to go in there with Palhinha, with maybe Bergvall in the midfield, then I feel like the progressive issues aren't so much of an issue when you've got creativity. It's almost, and I saw someone say this, With Palhinha, it's almost like let the creators create and let the duel winners duel. And maybe that's what Tottenham are doing. Thomas Frank wants players that are good at winning the ball. Thomas Frank wants good duel winners, good players that can bring defensive stability. So he'll do his work, he'll do his dueling, and the creators can create him. And maybe that's what it is. But what he can do is he can shield the back line because Mickey Van der Ven and Romero got absolutely no shielding last season under Ange. He can show up in the big games. He can win headers. I mean, set pieces. Tottenham looks so much better at set pieces with going off that one game versus Arsenal. And I think that's what Thomas Frank wants. I think Thomas Frank knows that he can't make Spurs go from 17th to title challenges in one summer. It'd be ridiculous. But I think he wants to stabilise Spurs. Put a Spurs squad that he thinks can get back in that top six. So then when you're back in that top six, you can then go, oh, now what do we do next to get into that top four? And I think he's thinking defensive security is something that needs to be looked at. Injuries, but I think with Ange leaving, you might get less injuries because Ange's football was causing injuries to an extent. Mickey Van der Ven. If Mickey Van der Ven goes a full season staying fit, you know it's on Ange. But I think it's about defensive security, physicality, being better on set pieces. And if we're going off the one game versus Arsenal, the setup was more defensively secure. The set pieces were better. But what Tottenham needed in that game versus Arsenal for me was a bit more attacking firepower. I thought Kudus and Odegaard were really good. They're really good at dribbling, progressing the ball at the pitch. And Brennan Johnson doesn't really give you that. Brennan Johnson can get on the end of things and tap it in, and his movement is good. But Brennan Johnson, for me, he doesn't have the dribbling ability of a Kudus or an Odegaard. And that worked quite well. Solanke wasn't there. I didn't think Richarlison was great. I look at Tottenham and I think, while Tottenham need a progressive six, Palhinha comes in on loan, does a job, low risk. If I'm Tottenham, I go and look at Visser. I go and look at somebody that you know is experienced, that can play striker and left wing, and also bring in maybe a number 10. Maybe you look at Iliman Ndiaye of Everton. I think that isn't a bad shout. Don't know if Everton would sell him. But I think you need to look at two good attacking profiles. Someone that can play as a 10 and someone that can play left wing, but happy to also rotate with Solanke. That's what Tottenham need. And then I guess if you get Palhinha, you can spend big on those positions because to bring in someone of quality, you want to be spending 60 million, aka Morgan Gibbs-White. I think that's what Tottenham are maybe doing. They're saying, you know what, Adam Wharton for 100 million is great, but then we can't afford another attacking player. And I think versus Arsenal, Odegaard was good, Kudus was good, but I think you need that extra attacking player. I think that could let you down. I think scoring goals could be an issue. I actually think Thomas Frank's going to sort you out defensively, but it might be scoring goals where you get worse, weirdly, which, considering Ange was always scoring but always conceding, it's different. But anyway, you look at Tottenham, there's a midfield triangle of Romero and Van der Ven. This, with a midfield triangle of Palhinha, Romero, Van der Ven is a very stable midfield core. You got Bergvall, Bentancur, Sarr will give them freedom to push higher up. Or again, if you play a 10, Kulusevski, Maddison, it gives them a lot more freedom. I mean, Kulusevski and Maddison coming back from injury will also be big for Tottenham because they didn't have that creative spark in their last game. And the Kulusevski in particular is a good ball carrier. Maddison's a good creative spark. Two of Tottenham's best players. So anyway, Tottenham are very... I think Thomas Frank is building at Tottenham a very dual dominant team, a team that he wants to make hard to beat. I think Tottenham under Ange was quite easy to beat, but in the Europa League, Ange changed his football. In the Europa League for Tottenham, Ange changed his football and made his football far more defensively secure. And Tottenham were hard to beat in the Europa League. And I think Thomas Frank is thinking, first season, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to make Tottenham dual dominant. I'm just going to make them hard to beat. I'm going to make them secure. And then I think second season, he'll want to put a stamp on it and be more expressive and be more attacking. Erik ten Hag came into Manchester United. In his first season, he came third and won a Carabao Cup because he just focused on defensive security and just making us defensively stable. Second season, he wanted to be more expansive. We spent 180 million on Onana, Mount and Højlund, which is absolutely horrific, and it all went wrong. But it's quite good to come in, and even if it's not the way he wants to play, bring a little bit of defensive security. So what are my general thoughts on Palhinha? It's just low risk. It's not who I would have picked as a 6, but it's low risk. If bringing him in as a 6 allows you to get a good number 10 and allows you to get a good another forward player, that's very fine. That's very good. Next summer you can get your Baleba, whoever you want. Um, I think it just allows you to invest in striker cover, left wing to replace Son, new 10 after Morgan Gibbs White failure. I think that's what it allows. You know, it can cover for Bissouma's exit, but it's time for you to look at Wharton and Baleba. But also, there's players like Bergville and Gray in midfield, and him being older, it doesn't necessarily block the pathway. In fact, Gray could learn from him. It could be good for Gray. And when you look at his experience in Europe, you look at his experience in big games. In the Champions League, you're going to be coming up against sides like PSG and Bayern Munich. And I think Palhinha will give you so much more security in that game. So much more security in that game. I have concerns around him. He has a few weaknesses. My concerns around him is very much, as mentioned here, limited ball progressor, not the best line breaker, picks up a lot of yellow cards. I think can be a little one-dimensional. He's not, Baleba or Wharton is what Spurs need, but they can't get him. Let's say right now. But you could be over-reliant on Romero. Because I think Mickey van der Ven's great, but Romero's your guy in build-up. There could be an over-reliance on him. But as a fit, it's a direct Bissouma replacement, brings more defensive security than Bissouma would bring, brings physical presence and aggression, which you lacked under Ange, can rotate in with the Sars, the Benton, because it can rotate in well. Spurs could be able to press higher and defend transitions better. I think it would allow Spurs to press higher and defend transitions better. And it would help Spurs become more defensively secure. So I think all in all, like, it is a good signing. I think it's a smart, low risk bit of business. And I saw someone on Twitter say this: let the jewelers jewel and let the creators create. Because what it's going to do is it's going to free Maddison and Kulusevski and wingers to focus on attack, because he'll bring defensive security in transition. He can allow Tottenham to push higher because he will bring defensive security. He will make Tottenham harder to break down. I think you're going to rely on the centre-backs and full-backs for progression, but Palhinha can break up the play and he can enable front foot defending and be aggressive, but also bring maybe much needed experience to a Spurs squad that, to be honest, is incredibly, incredibly young. So to sum it up, low risk, high reward, fills a gap that Spurs needed to address. Over to the next signing. Premier League proven, physically ready, Premier League ready. Had a few injury issues, but I think it will make you stronger in the big PLA games, in the UCL games. I think he's good short-term cover until you can get the deep line playmaker you want. I think all in all, it's good. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.